I think this is, we're kicking off a panel now of the institutes that we were just mentioning, and I'm going to be joined by three guests who will introduce as we go. Here they come. So in 2022, Congress created a new experimental program within the USDA. It was to create a partnership model for rural economic revitalization, and three initial sites were chosen, and the directors of those sites are here today. I want to say a special welcome to Sarah Rocker from USDA. Sarah, raise your, I have a light right in front of me. Sarah, raise your hand. Here's Sarah at the back. Sarah is our program officer, our partner, and co-creator of this program. So please give her a special thanks because she's a lot of the driving force as well. This session is to introduce you to the further work of the consortium, and we have the three consortium leaders with us here today. And so I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves, and then we're just going to talk for a few minutes, one at a time and in conversation, about the work that's going on across the country. You know, these are three very different rurals, right? Wisconsin, Vermont, and Alabama. And so I think there's some really interesting points of contrast and comparison and so on. These are also three really great land-grant universities, which I'm going to come back to in a moment, that have a long history of deep engagement with the rural communities around them. And so I think we're drawing on long institutional histories, but we're in a very current moment of facing some significant opportunities and challenges across very different rural areas. So let me start. Tricia Coates has introduced herself before, but could you say two more words about what you did and how you wound up here?
How long do you have?
2 minutes.
No, it's me again, Tricia Coates, and I'm happy to be here with my colleagues. I have had a career working across Vermont for the Vermont Congressional Delegation. I've also been an advocate for public higher education. I've been a middle school history teacher, and I grew up in a small Vermont town.
Thank you. Glenda Gillaspy from the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Hi, I'm Glenda Gillaspy. I'm the Dean of the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences at UW-Madison, where I've been Dean for a couple of years. I'm a classical academic. I went away to college at age 18, and I never left college campuses. And it's a delight to be here and talk about the Rural Partnerships Institute.
And Oladiran Fasina from Auburn University.
Good morning. Oladiran Fasina, Department Head, Biosystems Engineering at Auburn University. My degrees are in agri-engineering. Now you see how that plays into the work we're doing on the rural partnership at Auburn. Thank you.
Thank you. So great. So welcome, and thank you for making the trip out to Vermont and for a great retreat yesterday where we did a lot of planning. I wanted to start with what I led off with, which is all three of these are land-grant universities. And for folks who aren't familiar with that term, a land-grant university is a public university. It was set up by the Morrill Act, Vermont Senator Justin Morrill, and there have been successive creations of waves since then. And the idea behind the land-grant university was that it would be a university in service of the state that it was in. And so it was given a mission of sort of developing the technologies that would help the state. It was educating the students in that state to provide the leadership, citizenship, and development that the state would need. And they were created across the board in all 50 states. And they remain a very special kind of university with a focus on the economic and social and community development around them. With that in mind, though, the model of the land-grant university has changed quite a bit. I mean, in the 1860s, the model was that universities would develop this knowledge and just kind of shove it out there into the world. This program focuses on partnership. And to my mind, that signals a real interesting challenge, change, opportunity for land-grant universities. How does partnership fit into this or change this model where universities just kind of push out knowledge? What's the partnership piece? Can I start with Tricia?
Sure, thank you. I just want to back up for a minute and say that since its founding in 1791, the University of Vermont has been very grounded in community as part of its land-grant mission, which was defined much later. through our College of Medicine, College of Nursing, education, UVM has been at the core of the Vermont economy and communities this whole time. The Leahy Institute for Rural Partnerships is a unique opportunity to expand how we interact with community-based organizations throughout the state. With our statewide perspective, we have an opportunity to create partnerships with multiple partners. We have an opportunity to really assess where university resources might match community needs in new ways. For example, it was very clear after last summer's flooding and in our many conversations with the regional development corporations and municipalities that there was that we really needed to understand better Vermont's wastewater capacity. So we've pulled together a number of partners, and we are working with our own College of Engineering and Advanced Computing and our open source office to create a new wastewater capacity map statewide so that municipal leaders and developers and conservationists will have access to that tool. So it's an example of pulling together multiple partners across multiple disciplines, which is a new approach that we can bring with our perspective. And one other thing that we can do that might be different as part of our land grant mission is that we can really reach, and President Garamella referred to this, we can reach areas of the state that have been harder to reach with our resources. So for example, we have an internship cohort this summer working in Craftsbury and Hardwick and in that area of the state. Last summer, that cohort worked in central Vermont. It's harder for UVM students to work outside of Chittenden County. So we're supporting, we have a statewide perspective that we're bringing to the partnership work.
Glenda, how does this fit the Wisconsin idea?
Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, one of the really unique things about Wisconsin, UW-Madison, is the Wisconsin idea. And in many ways, it is a parallel to the land grant mission. And except at UW-Madison, everybody on campus gets into it. So students, staff, faculty see applying knowledge, technology, discoveries across the state. So for our Rural Partnerships Institute at UW-Madison, what we decided to do was to build a partnership between my college, College of Ag and Life Sciences, and our Division of Extension, which are two separate entities, but we work pretty closely together. And the idea was that given our history interacting with rural communities, that we could provide sort of the best leadership and the point of contact. So what we did is we started by going out to communities, meeting with various groups like the Counties Association, Municipalities Associations, and other stakeholder groups. And we asked, what are the issues faced by rural communities? And we got a lot of things, and some things were surprises, and some things like broadband access were not surprises. And then we took those ideas and we took them back to the folks at UW-Madison and said, how can you help solve these problems? How can you help begin to tease apart some of these issues? And so that's how we've built partnerships. We have funded a group of projects, and happy to say more about those. I do want to mention that I have 4 early career faculty, staff, students who came along on the trip from Wisconsin, and they have posters. They will present this afternoon, I think, at 4:15. And so I would encourage you to engage them because they're the real experts and down there in the trenches. So that has been our process. And once again, I'll just point out the extension angle of that. So extension is a part of the land grant mission where you really go and you impact stakeholders directly. And so everything that we do at the Wisconsin Rural Partnerships Institute has extension folks engaged who are going to deliver the outputs of our projects.
Okay, at Auburn University, we also partnering with Extension, as Glenda mentioned. That's part of the land grant mission. But also on campus, so our partnership has been within campus and beyond campus. I have my colleagues here from Rural Sociology and Agricultural Economics Department. But we're partnering with College of Engineering, collaborators, partnering with collaborators in School of Forestry or College of Forestry, Extension, and College of Agriculture. And if you think about the challenges we face in society now, it's not a one discipline solution that's going to solve those challenges. We'll all have to come together and work together, and that's the framework of our partnership at Auburn University. And then for us to be able to understand what the issues are in our rural community, our rural sociologists and economics collaborators are actually talking with the people living in the rural places and say, what are the issues? What do you need the university to help you do, right? And oftentimes as universities, we want to go there with our own ideas of what the solutions are, and I think that's always a wrong approach because we don't live there, we don't know what they need, or really we think we do. So that's the one partnership that we've created. The other partnership is in Alabama. The two major industries in the rural part of the state are poultry and forestry. So our Rural Institute partnership is focused on those two industries. And so we've been working with the leaders in those two industries. We've talked with, the Commodity Board in those two industries, the Forestry Association, the Poultry and Egg Association. We visited with them and informed them what we're trying to do and also receiving feedback from them. So we've been partnering with people in the community, the industries, and also within campus for us to be able to move forward on this project.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's such an important insight that the expertise doesn't just live in the university anymore, that there are perspectives and innovation happening in so many places that the boundaries start to become the problem that has to be fixed, not the opportunity to transfer anymore. That's great. You have, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. We got the name Rural Partnership as I'm taking apart the name of the work that we did. We have rural, which can stand in for a lot of different things. It stands in for, we say rural, we mean ag. We say rural, we sometimes mean small towns. We say rural, we sometimes mean a lifestyle or a political point of view, or how do you know what your mission is? How do you know who your audience is? How do you define rural in Alabama, Oladiran, and think about what it is that is specific about that the university needs to embrace?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to define what rural is. As I said at the beginning, I'm an engineer, so my sense of what rural, when we had breakfast this morning, I was quizzing our rural sociologist, what's rural, who defines rural, but I'd attempt to address your question. So in Alabama, as I mentioned, we have poultry, forestry. Those are the two agricultural products, products in the state. Both of those two, they contribute to about 1/4 of the state economy every year, and they employ about 1/10 of the workers in the state. But those two industries, as you can imagine, are also located in rural part of the state. So to get your question, Kirk, we even though we're looking at agricultural industry as a focus as part of this rural partnership, but the challenges faced by those industries are beyond agriculture, right? So a lot of the companies that we visited, the processing plants and the sawmill, they pull people in from 60, 70-mile radius to come and work every day, right? So if you think about the rural infrastructure, water, energy, gas, transportation, the condition of the road, and so on. So there's a lot that is affecting the agricultural enterprise in those rural communities. So even though our main focus is agriculture, we're not also limiting what we want to do to just agriculture. For example, one of the things based on the feedback we're getting from our sociologists and agri-cons people, is that if you have the technology in those industries, they don't have the people to be able to repair those technology, because one of the things we're looking at is increasing the level of technology so that it reduces the amount of labor, that amount of manual labor that the workers have to do. But then when you increase technology, that means you have to upskill people living in the rural part of the state. So we're creating an ag technology certificate program to upskill those people. Another example is cybersecurity. As I mentioned, they still rely on water, gas, natural gas, and electricity. All of those are using some form of electronics, which means they are vulnerable to cyber attack kind of situation. So as I said, agriculture is our focus, but it's also impacting every other aspect of what you can think of for anybody to live in any, not only rural, but urban place.
Glenda.
Yeah, I'm also quantitative. I'm trained as a biochemist, so you got the two. I like that population. I know that doesn't, fully describe everything, but it is something that we start with. And, I think beyond that, though, we've looked at, so how do the people define themselves? Do they define themselves as being rural? And when we think about the issues faced in rural Wisconsin communities, and many times we come back to this issue of, are there enough people to do the things that need to be done in the community? And a lack of people can lead to a lack of schools. It can lead to a lack of other community services. So in our project, those are many of the things that we're looking at. So for example, weather, we have a big focus on weather and climate. Are smaller communities prepared to deal with those weather challenges? On the agriculture side, we can look at almost any dairy farm in Wisconsin, and it's probably going to be either close to rural or actually rural. And how does weather impact the farming operations? Super important to Wisconsin, where a third of the state economy is food and ag related. Other projects, I think, that really get at that rural community health workers. Does a community have ways to train those workers? We have a project on that. Do they have the right sort of mental health surrounding within the schools? We have a project on that. And beyond that, we also have a project on indigenous food. So that's another type of rural communities, our tribal nations throughout the state, which are small, so they meet that quantitative definition, but they also suffer from the lack of comprehensive solutions to unique problems. So that's how I define it.
We, by any definition that the USDA might provide, the entire state of Vermont is rural. So we're going to take that and run with it. But I would say that for us, our communities are really Vermont's strength, and we find that our folks are very much devoted to their places, very much devoted to the quality of what they make there, whether that is dairy or whether it is a small company producing a good. And they're also very devoted to in general, devoted to the environment. But I would say that for our communities, our observation is that many of our communities are struggling with capacity to respond to climate, to respond to the changing economy. And so we ask ourselves, what can we do to support increased capacity at the municipal and even at our state agencies? And so you heard President Garamella refer to a professional development resource that we'll be providing here at UVM for municipal managers. We are also looking at providing on-demand data services, which we do now, but we're looking to grow that in partnership with some of you who are here today. And data can really help a town qualify for federal aid or apply for a grant. we're also looking to, for our part internally, when we have initiatives like our tech hub, and we have other, big initiatives that, would be a little bit easier to reach companies here in the area where our interns can travel to and where our faculty can partner. We're being very intentional about working across the state with other innovation centers, with other regional development companies, with companies that exist around the state, because there is untapped potential in our rural communities. And there are doors of opportunity that, if opened, we can begin to solve some of the workforce issues. And it's really important that we all do this, because we have wonderful federal partners in the USDA, especially, who do their best to support us, but mostly federal funding rural areas are not well represented in federal funding or in venture funding or in philanthropy. So the more that we can shine a light on the good work and bring these rural solutions to broader audiences, I think that we're going to start to shift that balance.
Yeah, I think really important points. I know the viability of rural communities is on everyone's mind. Welcome. Sonny Eppen is here, our partner from UVM Health Network. I know that's something that's probably he thinks about every day. How is that infrastructure, that rural infrastructure, going to allow us to do the things that we know we need to do in those communities? A couple of things came up in what you just said, which is ways in which rural communities are being affected by things that are happening very much outside of those communities but can have real effects, particularly climate change, technological innovation. These are things that can seem overwhelming when the resources aren't at the level they can match. Is there attention to that and projects to that effect in your institutes? Glenda, do you want to start on that?
I'm on, okay. Happy to start. So we have focused on agricultural and community resilience, and weather is a big part of that. I mentioned that. So we are investing in, I think the ultimate goal is 90 to 100 different weather stations, a mesonet, and our nickname for that is the WiscoNet. And I think we have about 30 so far that have been put in place throughout the state. And the idea is, by having these weather stations close together, you can really build a very intricate map of weather patterns, which are very important to the farming and producing industries. Beyond that, we're also looking at how we can use that structure to predict and react to extreme weather events. And this is more that community resilience, because smaller communities are especially vulnerable. Some parts of that are a little bit different. So Wisconsin did not have a fully functional state climatology office, so we have sort of reestablished that. And that particular entity has incredible number of contacts already with different stakeholders and local communities. So folks in Wisconsin are seeing more talk about weather and what's coming and what the outcomes might be than they ever have, and we're super proud of that technology implementation. I think with regards to community resilience, not high technology, but needed technology in terms of the economics of what are the outcomes for housing and housing developments, and how does that influence the workforce. And so that is a large project that we call Rural Livability. It has many different moving parts to it. But those are the sort of two main areas. I will mention one more: agricultural resilience. Studying, and I think this is in common across all three programs, water. Water is so important, and so we have a group looking at our Central Sands area, which has problems with nitrates, and how to get clean water. And that has an outsized impact on farming communities as well.
Absolutely. Patricia.
Thank you. I wish I had time to go through all of the amazing work happening on this campus related to the environment and our response to climate. And I will just say that it is a priority area in our mission here. And for the Leahy Institute, again, we have an opportunity to do cross-disciplinary project work in partnership with the community. So I'll mention 2 projects related to climate, which is a theme throughout all of our work. The first, we were approached last fall by Vermont's electric utilities, led by Velco, the Vermont Electric company, and they had they identified a real need to map and analyze the resiliency of Vermont's electric grid. And they quickly, we put them together with UVM's Spatial Analysis Lab, College of Engineering, and others. And this very large partnership is now working on using LiDAR and drones and spatial analysis tools to create a map of Vermont's grid in order to identify where there may be risks to the grid from climate risks. So it's going to give Vermont a more reliable grid, and it's going to give our utilities a planning tool that could hopefully help them reduce their costs going forward. And then the second is something that we're building in partnership with others on campus. It's called Student Engagement for a Resilient Vermont. And we have a very strong tradition of service learning here at the university. And last semester, we had, I believe, 3 or 4 faculty who designed courses where their students worked on projects related to flood resiliency with municipalities and with the state agency. And so we were happy to develop a cohort of students who did really helpful, important work related to climate, and we're looking to do more of that going forward.
Service learning, a big priority for our provost. Oladiran, I know technology is a big part of what has been on your mind with workforce and other things.
Yes, certainly technology is part of that. As I mentioned, we're looking at cyber, but also adopting the technology that is used in small and medium scale manufacturing. So as background, the state of Alabama has probably 5 to 6 automotive companies in the state or just close to the border of the state. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of suppliers manufacturing that also reside in Alabama. And so there is a center at Auburn University that have been working with those small-scale manufacturing and medium-scale manufacturing to move them to an industry or technology 4.0. So we're using the same concept as can we use that to move poultry and forestry to higher technology level because of labor issues that they've been facing. That's one of the issues that we've identified. They have labor issues. But as you do that, then you are opening up some other issues that you have to address, like the skill, the workforce, appropriate workforce for that level of technology. So that's how our ag technology came into play. The other aspect of that is in Huntsville, Alabama, one of the fastest growing cities in the country right now. About 1/4 to 1/3 of the DoD, Department of Defense budget actually flows through Huntsville. So the university created a satellite campus about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the things they're looking at is cybersecurity, because you can imagine Department of Defense and cybersecurity and so on. And so we're using that as a way to say, okay, can we leverage those 2 technology-related things to help our agricultural industry? Cyber will be a major part of our day-to-day operation as individuals. We can't do anything about that. And then maybe it's not climate, but we're also working on water. So in poultry processing plant, they use a lot of water to prepare the chicken and so on. That water has a lot of nutrients. So right now what they do is they kind of sediment the liquid, and then the sort of the solid is not really solid, it's kind of, it's still, you can still pump it. They just spraying it on the land, and the surrounding communities are beginning to complain about that. So we're looking at what can we do with that nutrient-rich waste. Can we make new biological product from it, going towards a bio-based economy? So there are a lot of moving targets, but they all they're all around technology and water and cybersecurity. That's what we're focusing on.
Yeah, I think that's something that came up yesterday in our discussion over dinner was valuation in the waste chains in food production. I think is a really big focus, in part because of the potential environmental impacts of that, and also we have to get more value out of the kind of activities that we're doing in some of these industries, and that's a way to push that value down the chain. Very, very important. I mean, I think before we talked about it's hard to work with a purely demographic definition of the rural, but when we look at rural as areas, we definitely see some quickly changing demography, whether it's immigration, whether it's aging, whether it's outmigration of young people. We have marginal communities that are facing serious problems with maintaining infrastructure, and at the same time, we have immigrant communities that are revitalizing rural communities. How are your institutes connecting up with some of these demographic changes? Let me see who I had on the list here. Glenda, can you start for us?
So it's interesting in Wisconsin, this was one of our very first topics that came up with many different meetings with community leaders. While immigration might be an issue for the more populated areas of Wisconsin, the biggest issue for rural Wisconsin is they want more people. Dairy farms, cheesemakers, food industry need workers. And they don't have the right housing, and in some cases they don't have the right educational systems to handle an influx of people, but there is a desire there. So in immigration, that for rural Wisconsin looks a little bit different. I think then the other thing that I would like to say about this is so many of those definitions of rural are negative. What's not there, or what the problem is. And I don't think anybody in a metropolitan area would describe their city to a potential tourist with all the negatives. We would talk about the positives. And so I wanted to say something about the positive aspects because I interact a lot with various stakeholders, as I've mentioned, in the food and ag sector. And there is an incredible love for the way of life in a rural community. And I think we've had that many generations in this country. And, I'm just going to tell a little story about a cranberry grower who said, the thing is, even though we need more young people to come back to our rural communities, and we want that, and we realize that they're leaving to go other places. That is an issue for rural Wisconsin. She said, I can really make a very positive argument why you should come back, because if you come back and you engage in the ag sector, you live on the land. There's beauty in the land, and there's beauty in producing food for other people. And I see that throughout the many, many stakeholders in the state who have that love of their rural community. So there's lots positive going on. Solving some of those other problems will, make it better for people in rural communities.
Absolutely. Oladiran.
It's similar to what Glenda mentioned. We've not taken the approach of telling the people living in the rural part of the state and saying, we know what the solutions are. We're actually going to them and asking for their feedback on what should we be working on, right, type of thing. So I hate to go back to the technology program that we're developing. One of our goals of developing that is we notice, as you all know, the younger people, they don't want to do the manual labor. I mean, nobody wants to do that, hanging 140 chickens per minute in a poultry processing plant. But if you try to put technology there, those people don't have the skills to be able to do that. So we said, well, since we know some of the young people are going to the community colleges to read technical degrees, mechatronics, and so on, why don't we encourage them to take a certificate course in ag technology? And so instead of getting their after getting their mechatronics degree and the ag technology certificate program, and then going, well, without the ag technology program, going to Huntsville or to Montgomery in Alabama or Mobile to go work for that small-scale manufacturing system, they can stay in their local community that has a poultry, forestry, manufacturing plants, but they now have the skill similar to what they have in the manufacturing places that they will use in the manufacturing companies. They have the skill to help the post-stressing plants to repair their equipment, to take care of their technology needs. So we upskilling them. Because several of those young people, they don't want to leave the rural place. They just don't have an option. So if we give them a different type of option and say, okay, we will upskill you, and then you can still live there, you get a higher pay salary type of thing. And that's the approach that we're trying to use I don't know whether we want to redefine how people decide when to leave the rural place, but we're hoping that that's what this will do. But this came up because of our interviews with the leaders in the rural community, not because of what we think we should be doing. In fact, it was never part of our original plan. This came up as we're progressing in the project.
Tricia.
We are excited to welcome new Americans to our state. And we have wonderful stories to tell about the new American community, especially here in this area where our schools have really transformed themselves to be welcoming and to provide the support that children and families need to make it here. We are especially happy at the Leahy Institute for Rural Partnerships to support two projects in support of this community and our state. And the first is in partnership with our UVM Extension Service, their Migrant Health Initiative, much like your community health program, Glenda, that supports the health, well-being of migrant workers here in Vermont. And it also provides education for the communities of those workers to support more understanding and support. And that's a wonderful, proven program that we're happy to support an expansion of this year. We're also, and if you're here toward the end of the day today, and I hope you are, you'll hear more about our rural renewal through a settlement program, which is really a wonderful research partnership with the Ethiopian Development Committee in Southern Vermont, in partnership with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and others, and the UVM Department of Geography and others. And it's really providing a research lens into this very unique, nationally, very unique program of resettlement for refugees in small towns. How is this working? How is it not working? What can we learn from a few years of welcoming new Americans to our small towns and providing transit solutions and access to job training and education and language skills? It's really an amazing story, and the research is going to provide a foundation for that project, hopefully, to access future funding, and also to provide learning for national conversations about rural refugee resettlement.
Great. I won't comment on whether our prior speakers went a little bit long or not, but I want to get us back on schedule. And so I want to do this on a 1-second really fast answer. Glenda, you brought up the strengths-based approach, right? About how do we define rural communities outside of some deficit model? And so what's that one strength that you see in rural Wisconsin that nobody knows about that is a key for your institute's success? What's that thing that's going to make that strength that's going to make this special?
I mean, I think it's love of community and tapping into that.
Oladiran.
Oh, I agree. I think it's the love of their community. They want to stay in their community if they have an option and if the environment is correct.
Yeah. Tricia.
Stubbornness.
I'm pretty new to Vermont, but I'll vouch for that. I think that's great. Listen, this has been a great panel. I think everyone's going to be here for the next couple of days. There's a lot of opportunities to talk more about the programming that's going on, and we have some really additional events coming up, but also opportunities for you to find these folks and talk to them about what you see that you think our institutes need to be thinking about and working on. Please thank our panel, and we'll move forward. You're here?
Thank you.
Okay. Gather my bundles. I learned at a previous event that you don't leave this podium until the next person is at the podium. Yeah? You're introducing.
Could you do that?
Sure. You can do it.
I'd like to do it. Thank you.